Good morning and welcome to our program, 1 year later, Ukraine from War to Reconstruction. My name is Rikki Devington, President of the World Affairs Council of Atlanta, and we are so pleased to bring you this free public conversation with Consul General of Ukraine in Houston, Vitalii Tarasiuk, whom I will introduce in just a moment. But first, a little bit about the World Affairs Council of Atlanta. We are a forum for informed discussion of global affairs that impact Metro Atlanta, and our mission is to inspire Atlanta to lead globally. We are able to bring you programs like this thanks to member support. To learn more about becoming an individual or corporate member of the council, you can visit our website, wacatlanta.org. Thanks to all of our many wonderful members whom I see on this webinar with us today. And now a bit about our speaker. Consul General was appointed to Houston in December of 2021. His consular district covers the territories of 7 U.S. states: Arkansas, Colorado, Louisiana, Mississippi, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. Prior to his appointment, he was responsible for bilateral cooperation with the United States and Canada, and has also served as foreign policy advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine. And we're going to be coming back to your experience doing that. I think it's very relevant to this conversation. And he had a successful, lengthy career in diplomacy, including time spent at the Embassy of Ukraine in Washington, D.C., and at the Ukrainian Embassy of the United Kingdom. He graduated from Kyiv National Economic University, majoring in international economics, and received a master's degree in international economics. Consul General Tarasiuk, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to Rikki Devington, the President of World Affairs Council of Atlanta, for having me for such important conversation on the 1 year anniversary of Russia's invasion, for a lack of a better word.
1 year anniversary, but also possibly close to a 9-year anniversary. And we'll talk about the context of in which we're talking today, of this long engagement from the Ukrainians' perspective. Before we jump in, let's just give our audience a quick preview of some of the topics that we want to discuss today. This, of course, is in addition to any questions submitted by our audience. You can use our Q&A function. We have some questions pre-submitted. They're fantastic. We want this to be an interactive conversation, so be sure to use that Q&A function. I will be reading your questions, so please keep them tight so I can read them and understand them pretty quickly. So some of the themes for today, of course, understanding this anniversary in the context of Russia's invasion of Crimea, which was March 2014. We're going to talk about economic aspects of this conflict. We can talk about sanctions, but I think more interesting, while we have the Consul General, we'll be talking about Ukraine's economic situation and needs. I'm personally interested in the Zelensky Administration's leveraging of Ukrainian diplomats, the power of diplomacy, especially during the time of war. And finally, we would love to look at what the end of war might look like, and then what reconstruction might look like. How does all of that sound, Consul General?
Sounds like a good plan.
Great. So we could have titled this talk 9 years later instead of 1 year later.
And it would be true, because as you already rightly mentioned, Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014 by illegally, attempting to annex Crimea and occupying parts of our eastern territories in the Donbas region. So yes, for us, the war is going for 9 years already, but it's just, full-scale invasion started 1 year ago.
And, there's a lot of coverage right now of the 1 year anniversary. You could speak for Ukrainians. Of course, our audience right now, we're seeing the Western press's coverage. How are Ukrainians feeling right now?
Well, I mean, people, for us, this year passed very quickly because we all were busy. Wherever we were, all Ukrainians were united and are united in trying to help the country to defend itself. So looking back, 1 year passed very fast, and across the whole world, Ukrainians will be celebrating, commemorating all of those who've given their lives defending their country. And I don't think there is hardly a family in Ukraine right now that is not affected in some way by this invasion. Either their relatives were IDPs, internally displaced people inside Ukraine, or had to leave the country, or some of them are fighting or lost their lives on the front line, or some are volunteers and trying to find all of the necessary resources to send to the front lines. So there is no single family in Ukraine not affected. But after the year passed, I think a lot of people are reflecting, looking back on what the life was before the invasion, reflecting on how we were before and how we will never be again, because the lives of Ukrainians has changed dramatically and has changed forever. And even after the Ukrainian victory in this war, it will never be again the same. The whole society is changed. The whole society is mobilized and united. Across the whole world, in different parts of US as well, there will be numerous events commemorating those fallen defending our country, and those still fighting. Because in Houston, we will have a candlelight ceremony at the end of the day today, because taking the time difference, evening in the United States, it's when the invasion started 1 year ago on February 24th in Ukraine, early morning, when people woke up to the bombs, noises, that they hear from their windows, so a lot of things changed during this year.
Can I ask you where you were a year ago when you first learned that your nation was under attack?
I was in Houston because we came to open a consulate in Houston, covering, as you rightly said, the 7 states of our southwest region of the United States in December 2021. And we were just about to open our office doors for the Ukrainian citizens and people to provide the services. So we were here in Houston, and I was participating at the energy event at that time. And we were still discussing things like the Nord Stream 2 and why it shouldn't be used. And I was arguing and explaining to my German counterparts there that this is not the right way, to have dependency on Russia, the dialogue that we were having with them for a long time. And so the next day, everything changed dramatically. I was participating in that same energy event yesterday, 1 year after. And some of the people were still same people participating a year ago. And what a dramatic change it is, because I think the Russia's attempted invasion of Ukraine a year ago, and more so not even the fact of this invasion, but the Ukrainian response and the response of the allies of the collective West, even more than West, I think is one of those pivotal events in modern history that changes the world, how we will see it and how we will live after this event happens. To me, I think it can be compared to such events as 9/11 or the collapse of the Soviet Union. Because after 9/11, the United States changed completely. The military that the United States was building, the threats that were important for the United States were completely different after 9/11. And I think to a large extent, the military US has right now was built in response to 9/11. So a lot of things changed. The same is with, collapse of Soviet Union. 15 new countries emerged on the globe, and it changed completely the landscape of geopolitics, of economics in Europe and in the world. And I think the same way this invasion and Russia's invasion and Ukrainian response to that changes everything, how the world lives from that point going further, because it already changed a lot of things. It influenced the geopolitics. It influenced how the collective West allies are responding together to autocracies and dictatorships trying to change the borders by force. It influenced a lot of markets. It influenced the food market, because we all saw what happened when Ukraine was not able to export grain from Ukraine, because Ukraine is one of the top 5 exporters of agricultural products and one of the guarantors of the global food security. And when Ukraine was affected, was not able to export that grain, a lot of countries were affected. The same way energy markets were affected dramatically, and they will never be again the same. Europe's dependency on Russia has decreased dramatically. Europe has proven to be resilient and is adapting fast. And I'm confident that European energy market will never be again the same. So a lot of things changed and are changing with this invasion and Ukrainian response to this invasion.
And energy is really a huge piece of that, is the fact that Houston is an energy center. Why Ukraine has placed its consulate in Houston, for example, instead of Atlanta, is that the driving force? We in Atlanta, Consul General, I'll tell you, we here in Atlanta, we have representation from over 70 governments. And so when we don't have a consulate, we wonder what's the thinking behind that?
Well, that's definitely the issue to explore about expanding our presence, but the logic behind opening an office here in Houston is, of course, a lot of things in Houston are important to our relations with the United States, and you mentioned one of them. It's one of the energy capital of the world, where a lot of headquarters of big energy companies are located. But also not only that, it's also a space center. It's also huge, one of the biggest, I think, medical centers in the United States that conducts a lot of research in the medical sphere. But also IT that is growing globally, and Ukraine is very much advanced in IT. Not many people know, but Ukraine is one of the 3 countries in the world for IT outsourcing. So we are really advanced in creating different IT products. So our cooperation in this sphere is also very much advanced. So Houston has, I think, about 90 consulates here. And it is the 3rd largest consulate district in the United States after New York and San Francisco. So we have also the consulate in New York, we have consulate in Chicago, and we have consulate in San Francisco. And when you look, of course, the embassy and the representation to the United Nations. And when you look at the map, well, what we were lacking is representation here in the central south of the United States, where a lot of economic activities are happening. And the region is growing, and the economy is growing. I think, Texas, if it were a country, would be the 8th or 9th economy in the world. And if only Houston would be a separate country, it would be 25th or 26th economy in the world. So it definitely makes sense for us to be here, to establish all of those economic relations to benefit the people of both countries.
I want to stay with the fact that you're in Texas as we enter into a conversation really about domestic politics and American perceptions of the war right now. Pew Research today has published a latest survey of Americans' opinions. And I might ask our producer to maybe drop that in the chat for folks, if we have the chat not disabled. If not, we'll put it in an email follow-up. But this is out today from Pew Research that says 4 in 10 Republicans in the US said this month, January 2023, that the country is providing too much aid to Ukraine. That's up from 9% at the beginning of the war. Texas is a conservative state. Have your conversations changed since last February in terms of this issue?
Well, thank you for this question. I probably would start by saying that Ukraine enjoys bipartisan and bicameral support. And the Russia's invasion in Ukraine and the US support for Ukraine for us to win this war is there. Of course, there are certain politicians on the right side of the parties, or on the left, far left side of the parties, that for political reasons, sometimes doubt and the need to support Ukraine further. But I think, the majority of both parties are with Ukraine and will stay with Ukraine, because when you look at the real numbers of support for Ukraine, the numbers may sound big, but if you convert them into percentage, so the percentage of the military assistance to Ukraine constitutes about 3–4% of the US military budget. And look what we've done with this 3–4%, right? So we were able to not only defend ourselves, but also, are progressing in winning this war. And Russia is one of the foes and one of the biggest adversaries of the United States. I think, in my view, this is a very good investment in US security, but also in European global security. And most of the politicians across the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, they understand this and support Ukraine. So yes, we hear there are voices, that say otherwise, but they were there all the time. So I think that the majority of both parties are with us and will stay with us until we win this war.
And I'll follow up with that. According to Pew, it is quite even. 26% in the US said the US was providing too much support, but 31% said it was the right amount, and 20% said it was providing too little support. So those numbers bear out to what you're saying. And yet another part of the conversation about US aid to Ukraine is concerns about corruption. And Zelensky Administration has been out in front of this, talking about it. That is not a new issue for Ukraine in the conversation of Western aid, but now that US dollars are going to help fight a war, do you find yourself defending against allegations of corruption? Zelensky has had to fire top officials. How are you as a diplomat talking about corruption within the Zelensky administration and Ukrainian government in the context of US aid?
Well, thank you for this question. The issue of corruption is not new and not new to any country in the world. And Ukraine, of course, is not an exception here. But I can tell you that in society in Ukraine, there is like zero tolerance to corruption, especially since so many people are giving their lives and defending their country with whatever they can. And so the administration, the president has shown leadership. And as soon as there were just rumors and journalists' investigations about the possibility of corruption, so all of those officials were fired immediately. And so this is the response of the government that reflects the expectations of the people in Ukraine.
I think that's an important point that maybe hasn't been covered enough in the Western press, is how outraged Ukrainians are, right? I mean, as Americans would be, but here they are sacrificing their lives and living it on a day-to-day basis, and then to learn that that support that was meant for them, it could be food support, military support for this cause, has been stolen, or otherwise the privilege or authority has been abused.
The investigations, for this alleged corruption is ongoing. And I just wanted to also maybe just say that together with our Western allies in the European Union and the United States, Ukraine has created one of the most sophisticated anti-corruption structures that there is in Europe. We have all of the new created anti-corruption bodies, special anti-corruption court. And so the whole system is complete. It has new people there. And, the investigations, even for alleged corruption, are going as we speak.
President Biden, of course, just paid a surprise visit. We have a question from our audience now. Has the US media inflated the importance of President Biden's visit to Ukraine on Monday?
Well, I think it was just a good coverage of the visit. We were very happy to have the president visit, especially, for the 1-year anniversary. I think it was a very good message that the United States is with Ukraine and will be with Ukraine for as long as it takes. we often always like to add for as long as it takes for us to win. So this is also important, addition from our side. And so, this is important message, important visit that shows to the rest of the world that the United States will continue supporting Ukraine and, it will support the democracy in Ukraine until we finally will be able to free all of our territories.
So, of course, the president's comments about, Russia will never see victory in Ukraine, his visit, and then, of course, the comments that he made in Poland on top of that, send a signal about the White House's position on U.S. investment and support of Ukraine. But there are, of course, others who say this is not a threat to us. The U.S. needs to prioritize U.S. interests. What are U.S. interests from your perspective in Ukraine? Why should we fight this fight with you?
Well, look, it's pretty simple. U.S. is a global power. U.S. is a democracy. And what we see by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, attack of autocracy, dictatorship against a democracy, basically shows that there is certain states, the revisionist states, that want to change the world-based economy based on the rule of law. And this is important for all of the other democracies to stay together and to defend this democracy, because democracy needs to be protected, needs to be defended. Because there are also some bad actors around there that are watching how the world, how the United States, how their allies will be responding to Russia's invasion and making their conclusions about possibly their own plans of doing something similar. So it is important, to defend this evil in Ukraine. I think, it's much easier because we're willing and able to fight. Just providing us the tools to do that would make everybody else's life easier. It's easy to solve one problem of aggressive neighbor in Ukraine right now than to have multiple, issues like that across the globe. That would be much more difficult to keep the leadership positions, to continue keeping them. So I think it's just, as I said earlier, a very good investment in protecting democracy in Ukraine for the United States and for the transatlantic partnership.
I think it can be hard for people that feels like a very lofty conversation, democracy versus autocracy. But at the end of the day, democracies are much more stable economies. They're much better trade partners. Talk about, if you're going to take your pick about corruption versus less corruption, I think an open society and democracy is probably going to lean toward less corruption. At least there's some, level of transparency. And also, Ukraine is so large and it's right next to Europe. So talk a little bit more about, to sort of bring the democracy versus autocracy down to an economic level. Why is it important for us, as in the West, the United States, for Ukraine to remain, at least have a chance at becoming a more open society, a more democratic society, a more transparent society for us as an economic partner?
Well, look, Ukraine is a big country. It's, in terms of territory, we're one of the biggest countries in Europe, but we're about size of Texas if comparing, with the States and the United States.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so about same size. So Ukraine has a lot of economic potential, but this is a little bit different. I think why it's important is because if you do not protect democracy elsewhere, then you will have to do it in other parts of the world, as I mentioned, because it's like with a disease. If you don't cure it when it starts, then you will have much more difficult time, curing yourself, because the disease will spread and you will have to, do much more to overcome it. So I think, just to put it in, that kind of, comparison. So, but Ukraine, yes, Ukraine is a big European state. And the support for Ukraine right now, the military support, this is investment into European security, transatlantic security, because we are already the biggest, the strongest, the most capable army in Europe. And we will continue to be this strong and capable army even after the end of this war. And Ukraine will be able to protect the transatlantic relationship from any further attempts of, bad neighbors that we have in the future, whoever will be in power there. So this is an investment in European security. And I mean, since US and European countries are in NATO, and that's where Ukraine should be as well. That's we've submitted our application to NATO as well this last year. And so, makes all of us more secure, because when the aggression against Ukraine started, a lot of experts were speculating that if Ukraine would not be able to defend itself, then Russia would go further to the countries that are NATO members, and then it's the Article 5, and then the United States would have to defend them. And so we're actually doing this job before it happened, for the United States not to be involved in a direct conflict with Russia. Without single US boots on the ground, we are capable of defending not only ourselves, but the freedom and the whole Europe.
We have a question from the audience member, and I apologize if you've submitted a question. I have misprinted this, so I can't see who submitted this question, but I can't give you credit to whoever's asking, but I'm going to read it here. And I will invite our live audience to use the Q&A function if you'd like to ask the Consul General a question. So this is, the question says, Ukraine has been asking the EU and US to provide it with air cover in the form of long-range missiles and fighter jets. Particularly Eastern European countries understand the direct threat that Russia poses to a sustained peace and are ready to provide not only the long-range missiles, but also the fighter jets. Do you see where in the very near term the rest of NATO and EU countries will come to the same conclusion? Where is the holdup today? And I feel like we have been having this conversation for almost a year, the issue of fighter jets. So I'll let you respond to that question.
Yes, I mean, the question of protection over Ukrainian skies is the question that we started raising from the first days of Russia's invasion. And, we are gradually getting everything that we asked for. It's just, it takes a lot of time, persuasion, diplomatic, conversations, talks. And, we've already received and are receiving air defense systems, Patriots, and other necessary equipment to protect our skies. Definitely, we need jets as well. And Ukrainian pilots are already training in some of our allies countries to operate those jets. The decision is not there yet, but we're working on that. And I'm confident that eventually Ukraine will also receive jets. But for us, the sooner the better, because, we will be able to protect ourselves better and less people will have to sacrifice their lives defending the country. So, eventually we will receive jets, I'm sure about that. But I will not go into much of the details. I'm not privy to the details of conversations on jets, but I know they are ongoing.
And Ukraine has also benefited from Russia's lack of Air Force, effectively. So it's part of.
They still have superiority in terms of aviation, but still because we're able to shoot them down effectively with the weapon we have. So they're very careful right now in terms of flying directly into the Ukrainian territory.
Yeah. I shouldn't say lack of Air Force, but I should say they could be a lot stronger. Relatively. We have a question from Dorothy Beasley. Thank you, Dorothy. Dorothy asks, what is the significance of an independent judiciary to Ukraine's brand of democracy?
Well, it's paramount. I mean, judiciary and law enforcement together are the bedrock of of the society that enables the economy to function properly, for the society to develop, of course, it's paramount, and this reform of judiciary is ongoing and one of the key priorities for the president and for the government.
Thank you so much for that question, Dorothy. Speaking of the priorities of a post-war government, let's move to how this war might end, when it might end, and really actually Zelensky's future as its leader. So let's just take those one at a time. First of all, when is Volodymyr Zelensky up for re-election?
Well, the presidents in Ukraine are elected for 5 years. So the president was elected in 2019, so the elections will be in 24.
Okay.
So, but how the war will end, I can tell you that. I mean, I can tell you the exact time frame. Nobody knows that. But as first, it will win with our liberating all of our territories. I can tell you this benchmark indicator that all of the territories that were occupied by Russia, and Crimea included, in the Donbass, all of those territories occupied in 2014 will be liberated by the Ukrainian armed forces. That's the benchmark. And the sooner we get enough military support for the counteroffensive, the sooner it will happen. So this is the plan. I mean, of course, each war ends with some kind of arrangement peace treaty. And right now, my Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba, is in New York at the headquarters of the United Nations, organizing the voting for the peace formula of the President Zelensky at the UN that consists of 10 big blocks that will guarantee the peace, longer peace. Also, there is another proposal because, as I mentioned, Ukraine applied to the membership in NATO. But until we're there, some countries already voiced their support of us joining. Some are still considering that. So there is a proposal that is called Kyiv Security Pact that proposes guarantees for Ukraine until Ukraine is in NATO. So in this midterm period, until we're there yet, there is a proposal, and it's basically based, there's a Kyiv Security Pact, like the countries can join it, and then, they will be providing security guarantees to Ukraine until Ukraine joins NATO. Because we had an experience of signing memorandums that guarantee our security in the past, so-called Budapest Memorandum. We're not going to repeat that again. We're not signing MOUs. So for us, the proposal should be legally binding document that will guarantee Ukraine's security until we are in NATO. So this is the process, how we see it.
And this, of course, is happening in the context of China's top diplomat visiting Russia this week and proposing their own peace proposal. How is the rumblings of China possibly supporting Russia, changing the calculus, at least for your representatives in New York and DC?
Well, I cannot comment on the China's proposal. I haven't seen it, so I can say nothing about it. But I think, China and some other countries are using the current situation with Russia's invasion to some extent to their benefit, with access to cheaper commodities like oil and gas. But we would be happy that, China, but in what I hear from the message that the foreign minister of China said, China recognizes the international borders of Ukraine and recognizes the UN Charter that protects the international borders of every state. And this is an important, I think, base work for any further possible discussions.
We have another question. Do you think war has strengthened relations amongst certain European countries or created ones that were not there before? And how could we see these relationships continue to develop after the war has come to an end?
Well, definitely. The Russia's aggressive behavior, invasion of Ukraine, strengthened NATO and strengthened European readiness to develop their defensive capabilities, because the realization that you need to invest more in security has come to many member states and European Union, and that they are investing now much more in defending themselves. And a lot of European countries are helping with everything they can, for us to win this war. The latest Ukraine Defense Contact Group that happens regularly in Germany, so-called Ramstein Group, consists of 54 countries that provide military assistance to Ukraine. So the coalition of countries that help Ukraine defend Russia's invasion is much bigger than European Union. It should be bigger than NATO. So it's a much bigger coalition of countries, like-minded countries. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that, as I said, it will have ripple effects. It's already having them on many, many aspects of our everyday life and how the world will be living after that. And the attitudes to security is one of the, I think, major lessons of this invasion of security. So each country is investing much more in their own security, but also in the sphere like energy. Like before the Russia's invasion, it was more of a price and availability of a commodity. Now it's energy security. It's whether you can depend on a country that is not democratic and that is not and that is willing to use this energy as a weapon for its political purposes. So I think the realization in that finally came in many capitals in Europe, not only in Europe, but in other places as well. So this is also a major change that will be a lasting change for the decades.
Well, it's energy cannot be overstated. And I think we could do a whole other program, and we'll invite you back as a speaker as to how Europe in the world's energy infrastructure, and everything about energy has changed, but particularly with Europe, Germany, France. It's just which will have every impact on every economy. In 2 generations, they'll be living in a world that's a post, Russian invasion of Ukraine energy world, and all of the ripple effects. We do have a question just about how people can help. How can individuals get more arms and needed supplies to Ukraine? What are ways to get U.S. leaders to move more quickly instead of just talking? Well, I might argue the U.S. leaders are doing a lot, but they are talking, but they're also doing a lot. But I'll let you answer the question.
Thank you so much. There are numerous ways of how ordinary Americans can help, and it depends on the way you want to help. There are big funds, like, for example, the fund organized by the president of Ukraine, President Zelensky, that's called United 24. You can go visit this website. There'll be an address of the president, and there are 3 areas where you can donate and support. It's basically, one is medical assistance, the other is support the armed forces of Ukraine, and the third is the rebuilding of Ukraine phase. And this website provides regular, I think, weekly updates how much money were collected and where they were spent. So there are other, big funds like that as well. So if you need information from us, we can also provide you that. But there are also smaller funds here, locally in the community that you can find. We have a number of those organizations here in Texas and across my consular district that are much smaller. They mostly located here in the US, and that they know people in Ukraine. They know a particular, armed forces unit, or they know a particular hospital or a kindergarten, and they're helping them directly. Whatever their needs are. And this is like, I think, the level number 2, how you can be involved. And the level number 3, you can help a particular family, because from time to time I get requests from people who say, I want to help a particular family in Ukraine. Help me do that. And yes, we help those people find a particular family that is in need. Last October, Russia started using Iranian drones, actively destroying Ukrainian critical energy infrastructure, with the aim that Ukrainians on the eve of winter will be left without access to power, to heat, to water, and trying to break the will of people to fight. And about 50% of Ukrainian electric generation was destroyed. So a lot of people appeared without access to power until the government was able to fix it, and we're still doing this job. So there are other people who still need, let's say, a generator. And so there's an easy way, you can buy people generator somewhere on the Ukrainian Amazon kind of website, and they will get it in a couple of days. So we did that a couple of times to the families with a lot of kids that needed that support. So there is different levels how people can be involved, but I can assure you that every little helps. Whatever you think of, please do it. I mean, and if you need any guidance, assistance from us, we're there to help you and to provide you all the necessary information.
And just to build on that, are there also opportunities to help Ukrainian refugees in the United States, families who've just come here?
Yes, right now, I mean, United States has a program called United for Ukraine program that basically envisages that a person here in the United States can sponsor a person or a family to come to the United States. Well, that sponsor is not required to provide some immediate support to the family, but it's like a safety net in case they'll need some support so that that person can provide it. And numerous charitable organizations, religious organizations are helping people when they come in, settling in, finding jobs, and some assistance when they come.
Well, Consul General Vitalii Tarasiuk, we're so grateful for you taking the time today. This is a very, very busy, I'm sure, and emotional time for you. We really are grateful for you talking to us today.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. There are so many other things we could cover if we would have much more time.
And we will bring you back for sure to talk more. So we invite you who are our audience right now to join us for future World Affairs Council of Atlanta events. You can sign up for our newsletter at wacatlanta.org. Coming up March 8th, International Women's Day. Join us and our honored guest, Barbara Pierce Bush. She is daughter and granddaughter of 2 American presidents, and she's co-founder and board chair of the Global Health Corps. You can learn more about our International Women's Day breakfast at our website, again, wacatlanta.org. Consul General, on behalf of the council and our audience, thank you for joining us. And until next time,
thank you so much.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Till next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.